Welcome to the KidMin podcast with Dr. Val and Dr. Virginia, where we talk about everything KidMin
and pull back the curtain on some of the surprises and challenges in children's ministry that nobody prepares you for.
I'm Dr. Val, and together we have over 45 years of experience in children's ministry.
I'm Dr. Virginia. Valerie and I met over 10 years ago in our doctoral program at Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary. We are excited to share with you all the great stuff that we have picked up over the years. We want to minister to you, the children's minister.
Welcome, friends. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are so excited that you've taken time to be with us. Dr. Virginia, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you, Dr. Val?
I am all right. You know, we've had a difficult few months at our house, to put it lightly. You know, my husband had to have hip replacement surgery. My brother's been very ill, and things have just been kind of crazy. But I think things are calming down. We've been getting good reports from my husband, from the doctor, so he's doing well. My brother is improving. He's still pretty seriously ill, but he's getting better. And so I am getting ready to do something kind of crazy. First, I am coming down to Florida next weekend to speak at Dr. Virginia's church. And so I'm really excited about that.
We're excited.
Her church is hosting a conference. And so I'm going to be doing a conference for her preschool leaders. And I'm looking forward to it. You know, we spoke at CPC in January, and it just felt so good to be back with a group of leaders. And so I'm really excited about coming down and spending time with you guys.
Yeah, we're so excited. I'm excited for you to be here. I'm excited for you to be talking to our leaders. I'm excited just to get to hang out. So we're hosting a regional training conference for small group leaders. So
It's really exciting. And so also then after I leave Dr. Virginia's church, I'm actually going to be headed to the Mayo Clinic for a few weeks for some treatment for an illness that I've had for a little while. And so it's exciting. I'm looking forward to it because I'm looking forward to getting better. I want to get better. And so I'm really hopeful that God has given me this opportunity to work on my health and to kind of focus on it. It is also very stressful though, because it's a lot of time away from my family. My husband's going to be staying here to help take care of my mom, my daughter, and he are going to watch and take care of mom while I'm gone. And so it's a little stressful to think about being away from home for so long, but I am hopeful for everything that's going to happen while I'm there. But I'm actually going to be gone on Mother's Day. So I'm not going to be able to be here to celebrate Mom for Mother's Day. I'm going to be by myself on Mother's Day. And so I've been thinking a lot about celebrating Mother's Day over the last couple of weeks because I've been trying to get everything in place because, you know, I always try to do something a little special for Mom. So I've tried to get all that stuff in place. And then I always try to do something a little special for my daughter too, because I want to honor her as a mother. And so I'm trying to get all of those things together and ready. And I'm having to trust my husband to make sure that this
it all gets executed correctly.
I'm a little nervous about that, but I am excited about it. But it made us start talking a little bit about Mother's Day and Father's Day. And so we thought that this would be a great opportunity for us to talk about how we honor our families in our church, celebrating all types of families. Because obviously our children don't always have a mother and a father living in their home with them. Sometimes they're living with other relatives, or they may be foster families that care for them. And so we just have to be so mindful of Mother's Day and Father's Day. And it's a delicate balance to figure out how can we celebrate mothers and fathers without causing a lot of pain within our children's Sunday morning, or with our visitors, or with our families in our church that have painful situations revolving around being a parent. And so I think that it's a good opportunity for us to chat and talk a little bit about how we can honor mothers and fathers.
Yes.
I know that there's been a lot of discussion about this over the years, and I'm going to have to admit that this is a topic that I have had to really spend a lot of time looking at my philosophy for, and my heart for, and what I've chosen over the years to do, because we had so many things that were just traditionally things that we grew up doing on Mother's Day and Father's Day to celebrate. And but family dynamics have changed so much, but also our heart to minister and be sensitive to traumatic things in a child's life, in family
Yeah.
life, has
Yeah.
given us the opportunity to try to be a little more compassionate as we
Right.
think about how can we celebrate families without causing pain on that day.
Right. And so I think at the heart of it is intentionality of it being thoughtful and intentional in how we approach Mother's Day and Father's Day. Um, and just like what you're saying, keeping in mind, people who have experienced child loss, keeping in mind children who, may have had their mom pass away,
Mhm.
and children whose moms are inaccessible because, just like what you said, they're in foster care, maybe mom's in
Right.
jail, and there's just so many layers to it. And
Mhm.
even our own, volunteers who maybe long to be mothers and fathers, but for whatever reason, that's not in the plans for them.
Right.
And so just being sensitive and intentional in what we do to just the
Mhm.
variety of circumstances that people may be experiencing.
Right. Well, and I think that this is a really important conversation for you as a church staff to have as
Mhm.
you're looking at Mother's Day and Father's Day coming up, because I think again sometimes we can be in a silo where we tend to just look at ministry one certain way and we don't
Mm.
necessarily think about
Mhm.
these unique situations that might be occurring in our church
Mhm.
family. And I think one of the things that this requires is for you to know your children well, for you to know
Yeah.
your family well, for you to know your church family well, so that you know the
Mhm.
situations that people are facing. Has a parent recently lost a child? Have
Mhm.
children recently lost parents? Do you have, single members in your church that would love to have children in a family, but that just has not happened for them yet? Do you
Mhm.
have couples that are struggling with fertility and trying to make decisions on how they will have a family of their own? And so you have all of these
Mhm.
situations. You may have grandparents that don't have connection to their grandchildren or don't have a connection with their kids anymore. So because of situations in families. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of very
Yeah.
delicate situations that come with
Right.
families. And it's not that we don't want to celebrate and we don't want to give
Right.
mothers the opportunity to celebrate and fathers the opportunity to celebrate. I think we can do that as long as we recognize our families and their situations and show
Mhm.
them care and compassion and make sure they understand how much we appreciate them.
And I'm going to say too, even if you're sitting here thinking, oh, no, nobody at my church is like estranged. Nobody at my church
Mhm.
has fertility issues. Nobody at my church, da da da. Even even if you don't know about it, just go ahead and assume
Right,
that somebody is dealing with a difficult situation that you just don't know about.
right,
Because there are all sorts of those situations that we'll never know about, all
right.
sorts of, couples who may have miscarriages and they're not going to talk about it because they don't feel comfortable or they want to grieve privately. And, people who do have strained family relationships, but they may not want to share. And so even if you have the temptation to think, oh man, that's not happening to anybody at my church, just go ahead and
Right,
assume that it is and
right,
act
right.
accordingly. So
Right, right, because like you said, there's just so much that
mhm,
we don't know about what's going on in
mhm,
families, and, we've
mhm.
talked about that before because we talk about that when we talk about safety and security, that,
Right.
we don't
Yeah.
know what's going on, behind closed doors in
That's
families,
right.
and so I
That's
think
right.
it's just important for us to because I don't want
Mhm.
there ever to be a day where people dread coming to church. I want
Yeah.
church to be
Yeah.
the safe place because that's what it was for me growing up.
Mhm,
Church was my
mhm,
safe place. It was the place where I felt, where I
mhm,
felt connection to people. It's where I felt, um, I always wanted to be at church, and
mhm,
I want that
mhm,
for our families in our churches. I want
mhm.
church to be where you go for care and compassion and
Yeah.
for consolation when you're hurting. I don't want it to be a place that they don't want to come. And
Mhm.
so I think that we have to be very mindful of honoring motherhood and fatherhood without using hyperbole One of the things we have to realize is the greatest calling of a man or a woman is to be a faithful Christ follower.
Amen.
Being a parent is a blessing and it should be celebrated. But when we put too much of an emphasis on being a parent, then we're not showing compassion to those who cannot have children or for those who have lost a child or, for single men and women who are not there yet in their life. So we do need to remember that when we're at church, we are pointing everything back to Christ. We're pointing everything back to God. And so that is what, the greatest calling is. But I think that it's important for us to celebrate being fathers and mothers and caregivers and people who pour lives into children. And that can come in a wide variety of ways. We see that in scripture. We see that often in
I was
how,
just thinking about Paul and Timothy, he
yeah.
calls him his son in the faith, and it's a spiritual son that he poured into. So, yeah.
Right. And you have that because you had, Timothy's a great example because he was raised by his mother and his grandmother. And so, but Paul was Timothy's, was a father figure there. But we have so many examples in scripture of people pouring into people's lives in different ways.
Yeah,
And so I
amen.
think it's so important for us to be able to celebrate that. So I think that there's a few things that we want to think about as we're planning our celebrations for Mother's Day and Father's Day. One of the first things that you can think about is the worship service itself. So let's talk for just a minute about the things that we're going to do in, where I always say big church, but what we're going to do in the worship center, in the main worship center. If you're going to be celebrating Mother's Day and Father's Day in that large group setting, what are some things that you want to think about? And the first thing that I just want to mention, and again, I've talked about how that, things have changed over the years, and I've really adjusted to how I feel about doing certain things for Mother's and Father's Day. But one of the things that I've always kind of recommended to leaders is to not ask mothers to stand during the worship service. Don't recognize the oldest mother and the youngest mother for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah. Miss
But
Eunice may not want everyone to know that she's 98 years old. Okay.
She may not, and when you're working with the youngest mother or the youngest father as well, there's some situations where family members may prefer not to be the ones to stand for those things. So you do want to just think very carefully about how you are recognizing. If you want to celebrate women in your ministry, have all of the women stands, but don't necessarily just, choose certain age groups.
Well, and two, thinking about, whenever they'll be like the mother with the most children stand up. And so again, you can just get into just awkward territory with that, because what about the mom who has no living children, but she's had, miscarriages or stillbirths or whatever, so it can just make people feel uncomfortable in ways that we never intend. So.
Right. And so I think that it's just that mindset of, just like I said, if you want mothers to stand, have all women stand and just, honor all women and how they serve in your ministry. And I think that's really important. I think that a lot of times in those services, we will have mothers give testimonies or, have certain things where we're drawing attention to mothers. But I think that this is a great opportunity that if you want to do testimonies, that women in lots of different situations can give testimonies. Maybe you have somebody who is single, who's very willing to share how serving in children's ministry gives her the opportunity to pour into the life of a child, even though she may not have had her own biological children. It might be a great opportunity for a stepfather to give a testimony, to talk about how he has poured into the lives of his family. And so it's finding maybe a wide variety of people that can give testimony. So it's not just, just a mom, not just a dad, but men and women in all different life scenarios where they can share how they have been able to pour into the life of a child.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah. One thing that we do every year on Mother's Day is it is also one of our 2 parent-child dedication Sundays is on Mother's Day. And it's interesting because that seems to be in like the particular area and region where I live, it seems to be very common, although it prior to moving here, it didn't seem common to me. But it seems like every church here does their parent and child dedication on Mother's Day. Which again, it's a nice way to honor and recognize families and parents who are wanting to raise their children to know the Lord. It's an easy way for me to talk about parent-child dedication with families. A bit. Okay, the next one's on Mother's Day. Don't forget, the next one's on Mother's Day. So, but that's usually for us a major part of our worship service.
Right.
Every Mother's Day is our parent and child dedication, which we have a whole podcast episode about that as well.
Right. Right. And so I think that that's a great opportunity too, because you do have that with those parent dedications in that way. You have families that have adopted children that participate in those, or, so, or you may have, or if there's a grandparent that's raising a grandchild, they may want to dedicate, so there's the opportunity to have that variety of different family dynamic to be able to be celebrated. And so that's a good thing to be able to do. I think it's important too, that as we're praying on those Sundays, as we have prayer, that we're praying sensitively for all women, mention people who have lost a mother in that prayer, mention women who are struggling to have children, or, or for the families that maybe have not been blessed with a child, like make sure that you're including all of the people when you are praying, so that they know that their needs can be taken to God, and that this is a good opportunity to talk about how God can give us peace and comfort when we're struggling with whatever it might be, whether it's a loss or the inability to have a child, we have to be also very tender for families that are going through difficult times, where maybe where maybe a marriage is going through divorce that's not wanted by someone, that it's there. So they're dealing with the loss of a lot of different things. And so these family services can bring up a lot of pain. And so we just want to make sure that we're being sensitive and helping them find joy through Christ, and not feel like that they're missing something because of whatever they're going through. So, I think this is also really important for us to remember when we are giving our gifts, if we're going to do a gift for a mother or a gift for a father on those days, because I honestly have had those situations where I've walked into a church service, and when I'm not the children's minister, where I've walked into the church service and literally the usher at the door like looks at me and says, "Are you a mother? Here's a carnation," or "Are you a mother? Here's a pen." And it's that sense of like walking into a door and somebody saying, "Are you a mother?" Like, because
that's so loaded.
Awkward, it's just this very awkward feeling, even though I am a mother and I don't have the pain that is associated with a lot of loss at Mother's Day. It's still just this very strange kind of feeling of like being put on the spot. And so I've always felt like that if we could do the gift maybe at the end of the service and just say, there's a table to the right of the entryway as you're going out, where we have a gift for people who, for women who are raising children, or women who are, like however you want to word it, fathers who, fathers for that day, however you want to say it. But give them the opportunity to go and pick up a gift, as opposed to trying to hand it out to everybody as they're coming by, because then you are pointing out people who maybe do have, those painful things going on in their lives, that it's like, how do you explain? Well, I miscarried. So am I, it's that it's putting them on the spot, which is really difficult to do.
Right. And even too, I think about times where it's like, okay, we're going to give every woman in the church a carnation, which again is still nice, but then you're walking out to the parking lot and you're like, I have this one single carnation. What do I do with this? Like, what do I do with this?
So it is this awkwardness of like, it's really hard to financially find gifts for these
Yes.
particular
Something that's going
days.
to be meaningful,
Yes.
useful, and practical and enjoyable. That's like at 50 cents a person or whatever. Like,
Yeah, because I've had so
yeah.
many. I mean, because I've always been, in my experience on church staff,
Mhm.
I was always the only woman on church staff. Like that was just
Yeah.
I was the one, I was the children's minister. I was the only one that was
Right.
a woman in staff. So it always felt to me where the pastor would look at me and
Mhm.
say, "Pick out something for the Mother's Day gift," you know. And so it was always that kind of, okay, here's your budget.
Yeah.
We need
Yeah.
500 of these. And then you're like,
Yes. Here's $10.
okay,
Go get 500.
how do,
Yes.
yeah, how do and I always
Yeah.
just felt like like I knew that nothing I picked was going to be something that the women were going to
Yeah.
go, oh, yay. It was always going to be, and so that was one of the
Um,
things where I started thinking, if we could do something else on those days, maybe if we could donate that
mhm.
amount of money to the Crisis Pregnancy Center, or
Mhm.
to a men's group, or to Room in the Inn, or
Mhm.
donate it to the Annie Armstrong or the Lottie Moon offerings. If you're
Mhm.
Southern Baptist, you
Mhm.
understand what that means. But could we just announce in church that this year we have chosen to give,
Mhm.
the money that we would have given gifts, to this, and say, this is what
Yeah.
we are wanting our church funds to be
Mhm.
used in a way that's going to
Mhm.
minister to people and benefit people. We don't want to just waste it on an item that we know that you don't really need. And so,
Right.
is that a possibility for your church to be able to do something like that? And I think that it shows, it's not that you're ignoring mothers or fathers on those special days by
Right.
not giving them,
Right.
a new pen or a notebook, but it's letting your church know that you take very seriously what you are using tithes for and how we are ministering
Mhm.
in what we're doing. So I think it's just
Right.
a great
Right.
thing to do that.
One thing that our local pregnancy resource center does that I think is great is they call it the baby bottle boomerang.
I love that.
And so on Mother's Day in all the churches in the area, we'll get these from the pregnancy resource center. They're piggy banks, but they're in the shape of a baby bottle.
Mhm.
And the idea is you take it home from Mother's Day to Father's Day and fill your little piggy bank with money that you're going to donate to the Pregnancy Resource Center.
Mhm.
So you get it on Mother's Day, you bring it back on Father's Day, and that's how we do like a fundraiser and do donations for our local Pregnancy Resource Center.
I
Is
love
this
that so
baby
much.
bottle boomerang? Yeah, so it does, and I think it's like their most successful fundraiser. It's very well received. People love doing it. Kids love doing it, because they get the little
Right.
plastic baby bottles and, put their little change inside and bring it back.
Right.
And so that's been a really successful and really neat thing that we've done, and churches in our area have done to support our local pregnancy resource center.
Well, and I love that because it's taking care of Mother's Day and Father's Day. Like
Mm-hmm.
it says, and
Mm-hmm.
it recognizes both. I love that
Mm-hmm.
it recognizes
Mm-hmm.
mothers and fathers in that way.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
I love that idea all the way around. I just think that's so awesome. That is so great. Well, I think it's just really important for us to be mindful of those things that we do. I think
Mhm.
that on Mother's Day and Father's Day, it's a great opportunity to have a photo booth area, like a little place set up, like we do
Yes.
for Easter. Because
Yes.
if I
Yes.
remember right, and I'm not, I should have looked up this to be sure, but I want to think that Mother's Day is like the third most attended Sunday
Probably. That sounds
of the
right.
church
That sounds right
year
to me.
after,
Yeah.
after Easter and Christmas.
Yes.
So I think that it's a great opportunity for us to, to celebrate families in that way, because maybe families that don't
Mhm.
get together all the time are going to be together so they can have a picture taken.
Right.
I think it's important to
Yes.
remember that in your sermon as well, why it's great to maybe not necessarily so much focus on being a parent, but realize that you may have a lot of
Mhm.
visitors in. So this is a good opportunity
Yes.
to point them to Christ and to point them to
Yes.
salvation.
Yes.
So I think
Yes.
that, that's an awesome thing to be able to do.
And a funny thing at our church is that if Mother's Day is always parent child dedication, and then Father's Day is always the Sunday right before VBS. And
Mhm.
so, our stage in the worship center is always, turned into an underwater theme, a jungle,
Right.
Southwest, whatever. So always on Father's Day, our whole stage, there's VBS decor everywhere. So definitely on Mother's Day, we'll be pulling out our backdrops and our photo booths and things. And on Father's Day, they'll just have to make do with whatever VBS decorations are around.
Try that theme and yeah, that works.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that that's the other thing that you have to think about. If you have children's worship, like what do we do in the children's area for Mother's Day and Father's Day? If you don't, because I've done it different ways according to the church where I was serving as to whether or not we moved sort of everything into the worship center and did everything together in the large church setting. Or there were some churches where I served where we had a very large children's ministry area and we did children's worship. Most of the celebration for Mother's Day and Father's Day was happening in the children's worship area. And so that's where we might have done the breakfast, had the muffins for mom or the donuts for dad. In the lobby area for when they come in. And that's the nice thing about this too, is that typically as the parents come in to the children's area, you're not typically going to have a lot of other people coming in that might have a painful experience going on with Mother's Day or Father's Day. So you do have that, ability to, because if they're coming in with their kids, then they're coming in, they are somehow involved with raising children. Right.
Yes.
So you have sort of that opportunity to be able to do that. But I've always loved to have just the simple little breakfast items where they can sit and have breakfast with their kids that morning. So that it's that little extra sort of little, surprise for them to be able to not have to stress over, letting them know breakfast will be at church this morning and have something there for them. And it's always a great thing to do. And so again, that would be a better place that you could hand out items for mothers or fathers. If you did decide to go the route of having a little gift or having something, hand that out in the children's hall or in the welcome area, so that way that it's being done, so that again, you're not having to ask people as they come through the door, are you a parent? I also really think that it's a wonderful day to either, if you have children's worship and you have the ability for the kids to be in the large worship center with everyone, to allow the kids to sit with their families on Mother's Day and Father's Day. I think that that's a wonderful opportunity for them to be able to participate in the large worship service. But I also think that if that is not something that would be very easy for you to do, it would be nice for you to invite the moms and dads on Mother's Day and Father's Day to come into children's worship and worship with the kids in children's worship, because that would give them the opportunity to see what you do in children's worship, and they can worship with their kids in that way. So having the moms come in on Mother's Day and the dads come in Father's Day, or having family members come, because you do have to be very sensitive. One of the things that I always had to think about was that we always had a lot of kids that came to our church that didn't come with family, that were maybe dropped off, or that, that didn't come. And so if we did go into the large worship service, I did have to make sure that those kids had people to sit with, during that. So that's why it might be easier for you to invite moms and dads or caregivers or families to come into children's worship than doing it the other way around. The other thing that's really important to think about is if you're deciding to create gifts or cards in the classroom for mothers on Mother's Day and for fathers on Father's Day, this really is where knowing your families well comes in very important. You and your volunteers need to know the kids' situations if you're going to be doing that, because it's going to be very difficult for a young child, if they have lost a parent, to, for them to think about, if you're just saying in the classroom, well, we're making this for mom, we're making this for dad, how hard is that going to be for a child that's lost a parent, or maybe a foster child that, that is not living with their parents? Or like you mentioned earlier, what if there's something going on in the family where, mom or dad may be in prison, or there may be, a reason why they don't have contact with them. And so we want to be really sensitive about it. So I feel like that on those Sundays, when the kids in your classroom, and that there are some that it would be stressful for it to be something for mom or something just for dad, that you let them know that what we're doing today is we're taking time to make a thank you item for the people who care for us, for our family members, for people who watch over us, finding ways to word it so that they know that they are making this gift or this card for. It can be a grandma, or it can be a stepmom, or it can be
Mhm.
a foster mom, or it can be
Yeah.
an aunt. It can be, whoever takes care of me. This is who I'm
Mhm.
making this gift for today.
Mhm.
The other thing we want to make sure that we do is that we give them the opportunity to make multiple items if they want
Yeah.
to, because we
Mhm.
may have a mom and a stepmom, or a mom and a
Mhm.
grandma, or, there may be more
Mhm.
than one person in the foster family that's taking care of them. So we want to be,
Mhm.
make sure we have the ability for them to make more
Right,
than one
right.
item if they need to. If you are wanting to be very specific in your celebration of mothers or fathers, then it's a good opportunity where you can make cards to send to family members,
Mhm.
to mothers, to dads, to different people, where you can find other ways to recognize these families without necessarily
Mhm.
having them stand out in church in a specific way. Because we
Right.
want to make sure that we're being mindful when we are
Mhm.
celebrating. I don't want to not celebrate. I want to make sure that we are being compassionate and caring in our
Yes.
celebrations.
Amen. Amen. And another thing too is that Mother's Day and Father's Day can also be good opportunities to equip families with resources for family devotionals, or other ways for parents to be able to minister and disciple their children. And we think about that a lot in relation to Christmas and doing Advent kits and Easter and
Right.
doing things with Lent. And so, how can we utilize Mother's Day and Father's Day also as opportunities to equip parents with ideas, with resources, to disciple their children?
Right. Well, we hope this information has been helpful
Mhm.
for you. The main thing is for you to just be very mindful as you're planning, and for your staff to
Mhm.
work together to find the best ways to be able to share the love of Jesus
Mhm.
with all of our
Yeah.
families in our church, no matter what their
Amen.
dynamic or their makeup might be, that we are showing them the love of Christ. And so I think that that's our main focus, our main purpose, and love the opportunity to be able to really highlight our families on these special days. As always, we're just so very grateful that you took time to spend with us. If you have any ideas for us on episode topics, we would love to hear from you. Please contact us. Please shoot us an email. Please send us a comment. We would love to know how we can meet you where you are. We just ask that you would like and subscribe and all the things. And we hope that you have a wonderful week and a terrific Mother's Day and Father's Day coming up this year. And we look forward to talking to you again soon. Bye bye.